at a time. Gosh. Okay.
Crap.
I surely lost your thought process.
Yeah, but I was also worried. I should. Oh, I still have some. No. Oh, Bush doctrine is a traditional
Bush
liberal, a liberal
No.
foreign policy thing with a conservative spin. Let me justify that statement.
All right.
Okay.
Neoconservative?
Yes. Historically, and you know what? I have to say that I have to cite the source. The source is a guy I knew who I deployed with, who was a senior officer who had studied national security studies and international relations at the Naval War College in Monterey, California. So that's the site. That's the source. He was the first one to introduce to me this concept of liberal versus conservative ideologies on foreign policy. And when I read Kissinger's book Diplomacy, it supported that concept. Now, what that means is that traditional liberal foreign policies, you can bring that all the way back to Woodrow Wilson when he created the League of Nations. And Woodrow Wilson was a Democrat, so therefore the liberal side of things. His point of view was that when you spread democracy, that's what will lead to peace. Peace is brought about by spreading democracy. And the League of Nations was kind of an ad hoc way of trying to do that. And it didn't work very well because, for various reasons, I don't even know right now. Anyway, then the conservative or the Republican side on foreign policy was traditionally more of a balance of power perspective. So a lot of more conservative views was that the way to achieve peace was to make sure that each side was equally armed, or that no one region, developed too much power without being counteracted by other power, and that the nature of conflicts within certain regions all could be tied to some sort of balance of power. So when that changed,
Shit, dude.
it didn't do it.
It's gonna be on the tape.
Oh, okay. So, damn it. Should I start over?
It depends on whether you want to pull it from the tape.
I can pull it from the tape.
Yeah.
Let's just clink the glasses so I know where it is. Okay. So anyway, so what happened was, the spreading of freedom was more of like a democratic presidential platform in foreign policy, and the balance of power, kind of the realism of balance of power. You can say spread freedom as much as you want, but really what it comes down to is balance of power. That's what the real world is, not this ideal world, is more of the conservative stance. So when Bush came along and 9/11 happened, what ended up happening in foreign policy is kind of like this entire flip of positions. Like Bush said, well, he almost tried to combine the two. Like really the only way you can ensure peace is by spreading democracy, but it's still in the balance of power kind of perspective, kind of. Anyway.
I don't understand.
So, balance of power in the Middle East. Well, who are the two dominant forces? Iraq and Iran at the time. So how do you balance power against those two in the guise of spreading democracy?
You completely remove one of them.
You remove one of them and you replace them with a democracy, and therefore you become the balance of power towards the other dominant factor, the other dominant force in that region. How much of that is true? I don't know. I really don't. But I think a lot of that mentality of, the idealism of spreading democracy in order to promote freedom, which I happen to agree with, which you should appreciate because it's a liberal.
I don't think
It's a liberal foreign policy thing. I agree with that. I agree with that, even if it's not realistic.
I think it's liberal only in the sense that it's idealistic.
Maybe. You know what? And to be honest, since this is, this comes from a person I knew and not my own reading, I have to say that this is hearsay, right? So, I look forward to commenters saying, you're full of crap because here's why, and cite the references, and I'll do my own reading and you'll do your own reading. But where were we going with this?
Yeah, where were you going with it?
I think I was making
the whole
the
Bush
point
doctrine
of the Bush doctrine and the case for invading Iraq, and whether it made us safer, more or less safe, and all those other kinds of things. I just ask you to ponder this. I would ask you to ponder this.
I will ponder whatever you ask me.
Okay? If we had withdrawn, let's say 2006, and the cost of withdrawal was a civil war, can we start from that assumption? A.
For your argument, let's do that.
Okay.
Because
Start with
I
that
don't
assumption.
believe that was a prerequisite to withdrawal, but okay.
So if the cost was a civil war,
Which we already had in 2006 or 2005. We pretty much had it already.
you know what we did have, and I can tell you this with authority, is we had Al-Qaeda playing that game.
Yes.
They
They were stoking that.
Yes, they were almost counting on that, betting on that.
Mm-hmm.
So had we withdrawn, let me ask you this. Which at the time in 2006, this was the case, if Al-Qaeda established a safe haven in Iraq, in Western Iraq, because it was the Wild Wild West then, and if we pulled out, it was still going to be the Wild Wild West, what would be more or less safe? And it's hypothetical. I would just say that that's the question I want you to ponder. Because this whole idea of let's get out because the cause is lost, it's not that simple. If Al-Qaeda's there and they establish a safe haven, which I've said before in many previous video podcasts, are we more or less safe? I would argue, and this is my point, I would argue that the fact that we are there and fighting Al-Qaeda there, even regardless of whether they were there when we went in or not, the fact that we are there and we are seeing through until we have won, because we cannot afford to lose, as illustrated by my previous hypothetical, we are more safe because we are there. Regardless of how much recruitment Al-Qaeda has in the short term. I don't care about that. But the point is that Al-Qaeda has
care
not...
about that?
I mean, I do care about that.
Because that's extremely important. Because that's the long term of the
I
organization.
just ask you to ponder that.
I will ponder.
That's my point.
Ponder, ponder, ponder. I'm gonna ponder you! I don't know!
Oh yeah? Oh, freaking... Oh,